All right, guys. Welcome to Conversations with One Percenters. I have Laban Ditchburn with me. Laban, welcome.
Buenos días, señor. ¿Cómo estás?
I was definitely ready for this podcast because I watched yours and Brad Lee's podcast, and I was like, "Yo, I'm in for this one." I like your accent is amazing, first of all, and I just feel like you have this energetic character that like you don't hold back and you don't let go, and I'm ready for that.
Well, mate, thank you very much for your kind words. I mean, flattery will get you everywhere in life, folks, if you are listening. But, mate, I've got to say, you're an interesting character. I'm very impressed. You've got a lot of characteristics that I see in myself. And I don't know how far through on your journey you are. I got a rough idea. But all I would say is that you're making all the right moves, I think, from what I can see. So bravo.
Appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Let's go ahead and get started. I want to dive deep. What this podcast is about. I think we're going to be in the first year of the podcast. So what I mainly want to do with all my guests is I want to kind of dive deep into their story, their journey, why they started entrepreneurship in the first place, and then what they're doing now, what their goals and missions are, and how they want to better the world. But we have a new tradition, and the tradition is you get to ask the question for the first guest, for the next guest of the podcast. So think of a question real quick, and you get to ask this question, ask the question, and then I'm asking it on my next podcast.
So I've got something that I think's beneficial, not just for the next guest, but a question that everyone can ask other people that will elicit a much more robust answer. And it's an alternative to how can I help you, right? What do you need help with? And it's this. If you could wave a magic wand that would grant you a wish that would solve the number one challenge in your life right now, what would that be? If you could wave a wand that would grant you a wish that would solve the number one challenge in your life right now, what would that be? If you ask that question to people, you will get the most extraordinary responses ever. And you can tell the next guest that they can use that one too.
Powerful. So we do have a question for you.
Uh-oh.
The question is, it's not that like big. What's your favorite book?
Honestly, I think it's my own.
Okay. Is that the book behind you?
Yeah, it is. And I'll explain why, because it sounds really dicky otherwise. I've got one here. It's probably you can see in view.
Bet on you.
Bet on you. And I've read, just for clarity, I think at last count, around about 750 books in the last 6 years.
Whew.
And I used to read about one a year. And there's so many brilliant books. And in fact, at the end of my own book, I've got a list of about 35 books that make it into the special recommendation list, Some are still relevant because it was, published nearly 2 years ago. But the reason I say mine is I'm so proud of it, Marcus. And I know you're on an alcohol-free journey, or you were at some point.
Still am.
And congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
It's hard to explain, but it's been so well received from people that I admire and look up to that I really feel like it's one of those things that for the first time in my life, I'm really world class at, really, really good at. And I was mediocre at pretty much everything my entire life. And a lot of that had to do because I was living completely and utterly out of alignment with what I should have been doing. And there's no regrets. I just had to go through all the other stuff to experience what I experienced to get to the point where I was like, okay, now I'm ready. And I've received messages from people that I've never met before saying, Laban, what you wrote in there stopped me taking my own life, or what you wrote in there helped me heal, start healing my family, or what you wrote in there gave me the courage to take a bold, massive and, courageous action so that I could facilitate my own miraculous outcome. Or, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but that's really the reason why that's my favorite book.
Where can people find it? Can they get it on Amazon? Okay.
Yeah, it's all over it's on every Amazon site. And for those that like the accent, you can get it on Audible, and I recorded it in my voice. No AI.
I do like the accent. I really do.
Yeah.
The Australian. It's Australian?
Well, yeah, I'm half. I was born in New Zealand, but I'm half Australian and half New Zealand. So my father's the Australian, and I don't sound like it's probably the difference between someone from California versus someone from New York. Like, they're very distinctive accents, and it's kind of like a mesh. Plus, I've lived in 7 countries and just spent the last 2.5 years gallivanting all around the world as well. So who knows what I sound like?
It's a good accent. I will give you
Thanks,
that. It's got it's like you got that like movie accent, like the movie.
This summer.
Yes. Perfect. I mean, so did you want to list those books now? You said 37 books. You had those 37 books. Did you want to list those now or in the end?
No, I mean, I can share a couple of them now. Like,
Okay.
It depends where you're at on your journey. Because, like, one of the most profound, when you say favorite books, I wouldn't say these are necessarily my favorite, but the most impactful and most profound. Because someone can say Harry Potter is my favorite book, and what's that going to do for your life if you're spiraling out of control and shooting meth, and like, it's irrelevant. But probably the most profound book that helped me on my healing journey was Facing Codependence by Pia Melody, and you can get that on Amazon.
Dang, I know I had a struggle with codependency, and I probably still do, but I broke some of it off. So take us back before your entrepreneurship journey. What was life like?
So my background is as a professional hedonist. And if you imagine if Charlie Sheen and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas had a baby, that might have been me. But I was always high functioning. I grew up in New Zealand. Mum and dad split up when I was 3.5, and it was a very dysfunctional divorce with custody battles and foster homes and poverty, which is character building, but the poverty mindset does all the damage. And I fell into this life of escapism, which was TV and computer games when I was younger. And then by the time I got to 15, alcohol, which is endemic in New Zealand culture, became, a favorite. And then it became gambling. And then it became drug use in my mid-20s. And all the while I was holding down good jobs, and then I ended up moving into recruitment, IT recruitment, which I did for 14 years. And that industry is very, very heavy on the drugs. There's quite a lot of disposable income. And when, cocaine in Australia is $400 a gram, it's reserved for people that have only got spare cash. And at 35 is, after a lifetime of just waking up hungover, on a come down, regretful decisions, and realizing that the direction that my life was heading, Marcos, was not what I imagined for myself when I was a young boy. I had to do something about it. And it just coincided with this night at home. I was gambling on a race in Hong Kong, horse race, with money that I'd borrowed to pay the rent. And in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen was a phone number for the Gamblers Helpline. And I'd never seen it, even though I'd been gambling on this website for months and months. And I called the number and I spoke to this amazing woman, and her name was Mary. And I don't know her last name, but I'm going to call it Magdalene, because she was my guardian angel, whether she realized it or not that night. And for the first time in my life, Marcos, she listened to me without judgment. And what I mean by that is, like, often when we share something that we're going through that's heavy to someone that's not well equipped to take on that knowledge, they go into like fixing mode. Have you tried this? Have you tried that? And really the thing that you just need is just someone to listen without passing any judgment. And she then shared with me some very sobering statistics around how quickly gamblers commit suicide. And it was way higher than drugs or alcohol or other stuff. And it was just basically because of how quickly everyone loses everything. And that really put the fear of God into me, Marcos. And she put me in touch with a gambling psychologist for free. For a year and a half, I got access to this woman. And in that first session, a week or so later, she asked me a few questions about the relationship I had with my mum, which was very dysfunctional at the time. And I broke down, and that started this healing journey. And I became obsessed with trying to understand why I was escaping rather than just trying to find another solution. And so I'm very proud to stand before you today and your guests and share that it'll be 8 years this August in 2024 that I'll be sober, 9 years for gambling in December, almost as long for drugs, like recreational drug use. I still do use some plant medicine from time to time, just for full transparency. And do you know what I mean? It's like when you go through a journey like that, I think the universe or God or whatever you use as source inspiration. For me, I'm definitely not a religion focused guy at all. I'm very much a spiritual, deep connection to the divine. I felt like this tap on the shoulder saying, Laban, why don't you teach people how to do what you've done? And that's when this desire to become a speaker and write books about this stuff and coach people and bring people together that want help. I really see a need for things like the 12-step movement. But for me, thankfully, I never needed to rely on that because I'm free of any desire to want to escape in that same manner with alcohol and with, habitual drug use and gambling. And so I don't have to rely on meetings. I don't have to go and spend time. And I would rather spend time focusing on breaking intergenerational traumas and curses and all this other stuff. And from a negative self-talk point of view, you'll very, very, very rarely, Marcos, catch me saying anything poorly about myself without some kind of context, because we all understand the power of words, right? And with 12-step programs, they say, hi, my name's Laban and I'm an alcoholic. I don't like that feeling. In fact, I've never said it, I don't think. I don't like that. I don't like that because you're just basically reaffirming to your subconscious, which drives 95% of all of our daily actions, that you are an alcoholic. And I'm not. I'm free from alcohol. It holds no dominion over me anymore. So that's just a wee snippet anyway.
Wow, but very, very. I relate to a lot of that stuff because, like you said, I think you saw some of my journey, which is like I work at a bar and I got sucked into the alcohol lifestyle. I wasn't too big on drugs or anything, but alcohol, I wouldn't say destroyed my business, but it caused me to destroy the business myself, like the business that I was running back in 2017.
Yeah.
All the way up until 2020, and for the longest time, I was blaming it on the drinking and stuff like that. But so you help people overcome addiction without a 12-step program, correct? Or not addiction. I don't want to say that because you can't say that, but you help share what you help.
The people that I tend to gravitate or gravitate towards me or gravitate towards each other are people probably not too dissimilar situation to you, Marcos. Like I there's better suited people to handle people that are about to die from drug or alcohol abuse. I don't really have the bandwidth or the expertise to take on that. I love working with professional athletes and C-suite executives, people that are creating massive impact in the world. And I do work with other people that aren't in those roles as well, but are a bit further along. They're kind of like the other side of the addiction, and they're like, now what? That same feeling that I had is like, why is this job not fulfilling me? Why do I despise getting up and going to my recruitment job where I really despise the people that I work with?
Yep.
And it wasn't a reflection of they weren't bad people necessarily. It was just like, this is what I'm talking about. The universe gives us these gentle love taps, right? Tap, 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 tap. Go on, do your thing. Go on, start that business. Go on, write that book. Tap, tap, tap. And we ignore it. And then it goes, come on, Ditchburn, and we ignore. And then it goes, whack. And then a pandemic kicks in and you're locked in your home in one of the most tyrannical cities in the world, in Melbourne, Australia, for the entire duration of the pandemic, and forced to be in your home where you record 100 episodes of your podcast in the first 8 months and write the whole book. So, and I'm very grateful for that, obviously, but don't maybe it's in everyone's destiny where they have to wait for that giant slap. But if you can get onto it a bit earlier, maybe it won't be quite so dramatic when it happens. And it happened at a time where we were absolutely destitute, because in 2019 I went out on my own and started my first ever entrepreneurial endeavor as a recruitment guy. And it was a total unmitigated financial disaster. And I used that for effect only, because it was the greatest blessing in disguise. But it was because it was out of alignment. I ended up spending all my time focused on learning the things that I implement in my life now and help other people with now. So, but the book is a memoir self-help book that's focused on addiction recovery. So that is more relevant to people that are any stage of their addiction journey. That's kind of a way that I can help them with them living vicariously through my journey as well.
And what was that wake up call for you? Because I'm curious, because I hadn't I feel like I've been there. I'm not saying we have the same story, but I feel like we share similar things in our story. What was that wake up call for you? What was that moment where you're like, this is not who I wanted to be?
Do you know, I had a number of rock bottoms, Marcos, and that one where I was at home, midnight, drunk, 3 bottles of wine, making its way through my bloodstream. That was the epiphanous moment. That really was the place where I was like, fuck, I need to do something about this now. And the pain of inaction was far greater than the pain of change. I'll say that one more time. The pain of inaction was far greater than the pain of change. And what I mean by that is that I had no choice, in my own mind at least, that I had to go and ask for help. And like Les Brown says, ask for help not so that you appear weak, but so that you can remain strong and keep asking for help until you get it. And I was just making that my number one priority.
Asking for help from friends and family, or just anyone?
Well, this goes back to what I was saying just before about finding someone that's not going to pass judgment, right?
Because I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of that person. Whenever you tell me something, I want to solve your problem. I'll just be I will be honest about that. That's how I've always operated. So I know what you mean, because that's how I operate.
Well, let's explore this for a second, Marcos, because I hear that and I really empathize with that, because once we go through some part of our healing journey, we are armed with this skill set. The danger is, and I'll give you an example of why it's important to manage what you're talking about there. My father, who was my hero growing up, he was a radio announcer, and I wanted to be a radio announcer too. And he dissuaded me away from it because there was no money in radio, whatever. And then him and I were very, very close until I started doing the work and started getting better and getting sober and healing. And it's not like he's a big drunk or anything. He has a couple of drinks from here to there, but his life has ended up really the opposite of how I want mine to. 2 divorces, retired, destitute, broke, miserable, a complete and utter pushover, no boundaries, incapable of holding down any kind of long-term relationship. And I would interview these unbelievable people on my podcast, doctors, motivational people, stuff that would really help my dad. And I would send him the raw video and go, Dad, watch this, please, watch this. And you know what, Marcos? He never did. He's never even read my book. He can't bring himself to do it. And that's my fault, because I never asked him whether he wanted help or not. like I'm not saying for people to be just a punching bag, to just be there on the receiving end of whatever dump that someone's putting on you. I don't want people to tolerate that, but like, don't go into problem solving mode, because you'll just antagonize them and drive them away anyway. The best way to fix someone is to fix yourself and lead by example, and forget trying to be the superhero. Forget trying to be the, and it's just it's a lesson. It's a journey that you'll have to learn yourself. But if you can remember my sage wisdom and realize that you'll wonder why you drove certain people out of your life, it'll be because, oh man, I was trying to force my stuff upon them. And that's okay. It's all part of this learning. But this is why we talk to other people that are further along in the journey, so we can avoid those mistakes. And it really comes down to a boundary setting issue, Marcos. You talk about codependence, like undoing codependent behavior from a lifetime of it takes work, takes hundreds of books. It takes thousands of hours of podcasts and research on the subject. But if you realize that you just spend your time helping people that want help, A, you'll get much better outcomes. B, you'll actually have people that want to do the work. And C, your life will be infinitely more rewarding, So it's like with what's happened in the last 4 years, with whatever your views on either side of medical mandates or whatever. Like I could see through the knowledge that I'd acquired through my own health journey, which was putting an autoimmune disease into full remission after 17 years of being told it was impossible. And I did it in 4 days by cutting gluten out of my diet, by the way. I warned family and friends about certain things and had it not only thrown in my face, but like I was vilified and pariahed. And then some of my content was censored and deleted. Mm-hmm. And now the truth's coming out, and it's like, yeah, there's a shadow part of you that feels like it would be really good to go, you see, I told you so, and but how's that going to help anything? Whoever likes being told that, so nobody, right? So my encouragement really is to lead by example. And I know that works, Marcos, because 2 years ago, my auntie, who's 63 now, reaches out to me and she said, Laban, I've been watching what you've been doing from the sidelines and I want help. I'm ready. And I connected her with a health coach friend of mine. She ended up losing, I think she lost 60 pounds. She's 5'2", by the way, and which is a short ass. And put her type 2 diabetes into full remission. But more importantly, like, her relationship with her partner's massively improved. Her mental health's gone through the roof. And now she is this unquenchable light of lead by example that the rest of the family, some of whom have declared me an evangelical nut, can now see that I was right. But I don't need to say I was right, told you so. Like, they can see that through her. And then that what that does, it brings credibility to what I'm doing, and allows people to then make their own decisions. For the people that are open enough to it, Marcos, that are in enough pain to be able to make it a bold, massive and courageous action to facilitate their own miraculous outcome, they're the ones that'll tap on your shoulder and say, hey, Marcos, what are you doing? I want help. Can you help me? And that's when you get them. That's when you get them in the best way possible.
So I've found myself, I'm sober, but it took a long journey. It took a lot. I tried 75 hard. I'm not sure if you know what that is, but basically Andy Frisella teaches 75 hard. I tried that. I tried multiple other things, and it was like a roller coaster. I would quit, and then I would be like, okay, well, I quit for 75 days, so let's go and get a drink and celebrate. And the next thing you know, I'm over here drinking again, and it's just like, I've learned that you can't give yourself even a little bit of like a leeway. Like, if you tell yourself, okay, let's go celebrate one day, then it's like you're just gonna snowball back into doing whatever you were doing again. And so I've made it so far 1.5 years, but I'm coming to the point to where it's like, okay, well, I've achieved this 1.5 years. Like when people always ask me, when are you going to drink again? Like, are you going to keep going? So what kept me from drinking and what's keeping me from drinking now is I want to grow a business. I want to go to the next level, grow a business. And I know that drinking's is not beneficial because I changed my belief from like drinking was good to the drinking brings me backwards in life. Every time I drink, it's going to bring me backwards in life. And that belief right there has helped me not drink for 1.5 months or 1.5 years. But I'm curious what, because you said 7 years? You're 7 years sober?
8 years.
8
in
years.
August. Yeah.
Um,
Not even close to that.
What has been your driving factor and has it changed over time?
So I touched on it earlier, but I've killed any desire to want to drink. I've killed well, I will never say never because I think that's a grandiose statement. I can internally say to you, yeah, because that's how I feel. There's absolutely no circumstance in which I would ever feel obliged to have a drink. Like Anna and I, my wife, who's this beautiful Russian and Japanese, 10 inside and out. We got married in Las Vegas and we got upgraded to a suite at the Virgin Hotel there. And we were offered drink cards and gambling chips, like, no thanks, no gracias. And it's like, because my wife never had any issues with drink or gambling or whatever, but she basically supports me through her own actions. She made a decision the first time when we got together to not drink. She did 3.5 years, and then she had a couple of glasses of wine last year, but altogether she's probably had about 20 glasses of wine the entire time we've known each other. We've been together, 6 years in September. And it's just like, it doesn't even feature on my radar. And the thing that I would encourage you to think about, Marcos, and for anyone listening to this, if you've still got friends in your circle that are saying, hey, when are you going to drink again? It's probably time to find some new friends. And if for anyone that reads the book, and I talk about this, I had 2 of my oldest friends invite me to a rugby game, a rugby union game. It was the All Blacks versus Australia. It's called the Bledisloe Cup. And it's probably like the Super Bowl for NFL, right? And I had just given up. I'd been sober about 5 weeks, I think. And I said, hey, look, I'd love to come, but I'm just letting you know I'm not drinking. And I was invited to the corporate box for the TAB, which is the largest gambling company in Australia. But I said, hey, look, I'm just not drinking or gambling. And they're like, okay. And then pre-game, they ordered drinks for themselves and said, what do you want, Laban? I said, I'll get a lemon lime and bitters, which is a non-alcoholic drink, although, people would argue and say bitters has alcohol, but it's such a nominal amount. And they put a shot of vodka in the first thing. I didn't know until after I'd finished it. And like with friends like that, Marcos, who needs enemies? It's like, and I don't say their names in the book, but I reference the incident because it happened, and they know who they are. But guess what? They don't get to be in my life anymore. That kind of behavior is not, and it's like life's too challenging when you're going through this journey to make allowances for that kind of behavior. So, and maybe I've gone on the extreme end of things, Marcos, but I've become world class at setting ruthless boundaries in my life, including family. And some people will be like, yeah, you can't do that to family. Well, watch me. And I did it with my mum. And my mum, her and I had a very dysfunctional relationship, like I mentioned at the beginning. But it was because of this ability to say, hey, Mum, if you're going to continue to talk like this, I don't actually want to spend any time with you at all. So don't call me until you're ready. And it was probably 1.5 years that went by, and then she finally reached out and has come around, and I now have a much more functional relationship with my mum. It's not perfect, but it's way better. And this is the whole point of what I'm saying. Like, if you've got people in your life that are not lifting you up, get rid of them. There's way better high quality people. And I didn't realize this at the time. And this is something that's really important that I love to share, is that when you go through this transition, you will lose people in your life. There will be casualties, but it's not a bad thing, because you are creating bandwidth and space in your life to allow other high quality humans into it. But I didn't know that at the time. So I went through a lot of mourning, and I had a lot of loss and a lot of grieving, because all of the, 97% of my former circle of friends just evaporated overnight. And had I known what I know now, I would have been more at peace with things. But I was devastated, Marcos. I'm devastated. I was like I was a super social guy. But now I get to spend time with great people like you. And, like Les Brown wrote the foreword for my book, came on the podcast when I had 10 subscribers. And then in 2022, when Anna and I were traveling across the United States, he invited us to his place for dinner, and we had dinner with the three of us. And I'm sitting there at this situation across from my hero, who is now calling me family and who I've been able to help. And the guy that's regarded as the greatest transformational speaker of our generation is weeping on the other side of the dining room table because Anna, my wife, has asked him what he needs help with. And his son is struggling with bipolar disorder and drug use. And he doesn't know what to do about it. And that's public information. So it's not like it's, secret stuff. But this is the life that I get to live now. And I wouldn't change that for the world. I wouldn't change that for all the former friendships and all the deceit and all the other malarkey that goes on.
That's incredible. I am like speechless from that, because I'm like, I really resonate with you on a lot of that stuff. The biggest thing for me, I would say, was when you touched on boundaries. That's a tough one, and like you said in the beginning, it's not easy to set boundaries. And
well, let me just catch the language, and then you can ask the rest of the question.
Okay.
You just said to yourself, it's tough to set boundaries. What happens if we keep saying that out loud? Like any mantra, what's it going to be? Tough, right? I'm getting better and better at setting boundaries. Mm-hmm. I'm getting better and better at setting boundaries. Like, these things are really important, and it might seem a little bit nitpicky, but like when you're coming through the other side of, major dysfunction, you have to be, this is about the 1%ers. How would the 1%er set a boundary? They're not going to tolerate, the mother-in-law that dude, the amount of people that I speak to that have relatives that are the single cause of the most amount of pain ever is mind-blowing. And I'm just sitting there shaking my head thinking, I would not tolerate that behavior for 1 minute. I'll give you another example real quick, right? My youngest half-sister, so I got an older half-brother from a different father, a younger full-blooded brother from my mum and dad, obviously, and then two younger half-sisters from a separate mother, like a stepmother. We used to host Christmas at our place, my wife and I, for about 3 years in a row. And my younger sister was vegetarian for the animals. But she would eat fish from time to time. So it's not even vegetarian, pescatarian, right? And I would cook fish. Otherwise, the rest of the family would cook, beautiful steaks and oysters and all this other stuff. And I used a carnivore diet for 3.5 years to heal my autoimmune disease. But I also, incidentally, think that it was an integral part of healing from addiction. Just as a side note, we can talk about that if you want later. Then we got invited to her place for Christmas dinner. And she sends a message saying, you're not cooking any meat at my place. We don't cook meat here. So you know what I said, Marcos? And maybe this was a little bit over the top. I said, take your Christmas day and stick it up your ass. How dare she, right? How dare she? The fact, it's not even like she doesn't like the smell. And at this time, 3 of the family members were using an increase in animal-based products to help with mental health. So this wasn't some kind of like, I don't know what you'd call it. Like people were using this as medicine. And you can disagree with me all you like. I don't care. Like, whatever. I know what was happening. And it was the way she went about it too. It was this I'm better than you. What you're doing is, blah, 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 blah. And incidentally, she's the morbidly obese one and the most woke one, and rushed out and got an experimental mRNA, and is going to suffer the consequences of that. But her and I don't have any relationship right now. I don't need people like that in my life. And you might be hearing this going, man, that sounds really harsh and whatever. Like her and I used to have a really great relationship. I was the older brother, But this is the level of discipline that I want to set in my life. Like, who treats their family like that? It's not someone who is really, truly empathetic and blah, blah, blah. Like, the best outcomes are people that are respectful of other people's boundaries. But, like, there's hey, like, and people might be saying, well, Laban, what's the solution? The solution's way better communication. A phone call. Hey, Lab, this is where we stand on, cooking meat in the house. What can we do to find a solution? And if I'm honest, I probably would have made if she'd approached it that way, I probably would have made an exception and just said, we'll just cook it before we come, whatever. Okay, not a big deal. But it was just the arrogance behind it. And it's like, well, guess what? You don't get to be in my life anymore. Tough bickies. So, I don't need people like that. So then that space creates another spot for a high quality human in my life. And, I don't want to say this to brag or to make myself seem important, Marcos, but I was talking to a former guest on the podcast, a guy, Captain Charlie Plum. And for those who don't know, Charlie Plum was an Air Force pilot during Vietnam who was shot down over Hanoi and held as a prisoner, a POW, for 6.5 years. The first 4.5 years, he was in an 8-foot by 8-foot cell with no light and forbidden from speaking. And these guys were starved within an inch of their lives. And he was in there with John McCain, for those who are familiar with him, right? And I'm talking to Charlie just maybe 2 months ago, and he's asking me how things are going. And at the time, my wife and I were in Colombia, in Medellin. We'd been living there for 5 months. And my wife, Anna, had just come out of surgery for an ectopic pregnancy, which is when the egg and the sperm starts growing in the fallopian tube. And it's a miscarriage. You lose the pregnancy. But it's also very dangerous for the woman. And my wife has had 4 of these ectopics and 20 miscarriages in a row. 20. And I'm telling Charlie this. And he says to me, Laban, he goes, you are the most extraordinary person I know. And I was like, I'm speechless now. Like, this is a guy that has endured being a prisoner of war. And I'm thinking to myself, either being a POW ain't that hard, or maybe there's some merit to what he's saying. And I suppose my point is, and I'm not at all diminishing being a POW. If you read his book, it sounds like an absolute nightmare. But all of these POWs came out the other side, and only 3% of all the POWs in Vietnam came out with chronic PTSD issues. Only 3. And a third of all the Vietnam veterans came back with like severe PTSD, by the way. And it was because they maintained rank, and they followed the rules of war and maintained this very powerful, strong mental resilience. But him sharing that with me was probably one of the most humbling things I've ever heard in my entire life. And there's a whole other backstory about all the other stuff that we've had to make work while we've been on the road and build a business while we're in Mexico and India and these other countries, after being forced to leave our own country because of mandates. And you just will not get that kind of feedback from high quality humans in your life if you're willing to tolerate shitty boundary setting. You just will not. And so this is the significance of it. And this is why I love talking about this stuff so much, because it is so important. And here's the beautiful thing. If everyone set a powerful enough boundary with what they are, what's, core alignment, values, that kind of thing, the only way that people would have anything to do with them going forward would be if they adhered to the boundary. And if they were fair and reasonable boundaries, because there is some unfair ones, then everyone would be getting on much better with other people. And there would be no ambiguity or tolerating of bullshit behavior. And this is a utopian thought in many ways, I think. But imagine if the world got 10% at setting boundaries for itself. Hey, Mr. Government, what you're doing with our money is totally inappropriate, and we're going to vote you out the next election. Or we're not going to tolerate this particular environmental thing that you're doing, or the poisoning of the food or the water system, and we're going to, do you know what I mean? Like if everyone
or the censorship.
Or the censorship, right? Like that's a beautiful case in point. And yeah, that's where I'll finish there.
Yeah, the censorship is a big one. I think if we all came together, that we could definitely stop that. But no, I appreciate you catching me on my wording, because I even have a picture of Muhammad Ali right there on purpose, because he has the most powerful belief system that I know, and he never used any talk that was not going to that was like bad for him. He always said he's the greatest, even if he wasn't the greatest. He said he was the greatest. He came in. He's mentally sharp, and I even have this right here, which I'm gonna write. What I just said earlier, I'm gonna write down here to switch up the wording of what I just said. Whenever I said that it's hard to set boundaries, because I do believe it's true. What you tell yourself, you become.
Without a doubt. And I'll give you a shortcut that can help folks. And I got this from Jack Canfield when I interviewed him. And he was talking about getting a swear jar at home, but instead of putting money in it for every time you use profanity, you put money in for negative self-talk, and you get the whole family on board. And then by the end of the month, you got $300-$400 in there. It's like, ouch. It's
what do you do with it?
Well,
what do you do with the money?
You put it towards something that, like if it's just you, Marcos, like are you married with kids? Or you got family or anything around? Or just you? So so it's just Anna and I for now, right? So if we were to do it, we would just say, well, what's something that, you don't even really need a goal, because the goal is to not put any money in the damn jar, right? But when you do it, and it doesn't take very long, because when I did it, it was within a month. I was so self-aware of the language that I was using that I stopped using it. So I went from, I probably reduced negative self-talk by about 99.9%. Is a pretty conservative number, because it was prolific, and especially in New Zealand, Australia, and England, and Canada to some degree, like self-deprecating humor is a big thing, and like tall poppy syndrome also exists in New Zealand, Australia. What I mean by that is like tall poppy syndrome is like athletes, professional athletes or whatever, will do something really truly incredible, and there's this like false humility that comes in. It's like, yeah, and they'll lay credit to all and sundry, and they won't take any credit for themselves. And there's a fine line between ego and actually, I did this, and it was bloody hard, and so they and externally people will shut down people that are rising to the top. So when I introduce when people are introduced to me, or we meet each other somewhere out networking, and they say, "Oh, hey Laban, nice to meet you. What do you do?" And it's one of my favorite questions. It's like, I'm the world's best courage coach, or courage coach, as you say in America, right? And they're like 99 times out of 100, like, wow, what does that look like? And I go, well, I teach people how to take bold, massive, and courageous action so that they can facilitate their own miraculous outcomes. And I do that through my speaking, my book, my podcast series, my coaching, and the masterminds that I run. And what that does is for people that aren't in this space, it gives them a lot more clarity and the confidence to ask more questions. And for people that are in this space, it gives them the clarity to know how they can help me very quickly and what they can ask for help for. But if you were to say world's best courage coach to my former circle of friends, that would be a very interesting response. I honestly don't know how they would respond. I guess a lot of them would probably spit on the ground and who are you trying
like
to
you? They're like,
yeah. But it's just real quick, Marcos, like it's not an ego statement. It's a declaration of how I show up in the world.
mm-hmm.
And so I do wake up every morning and I'm like, okay, how would the world's best courage coach conduct himself? And, you know, when we lived in Mexico, I would record most of my podcasts in a pink linen jacket with no shirt underneath, just mainly because it was hot. But then people started to really pay attention to it. And when I interviewed Dan Henry, he said, like, he gave me a testimonial saying, I love the fact that he's got no shirt on, he's got a lot of balls, blah, blah, blah. Like, and it was that kind of, that makes me memorable. And I know you got roasted by Dan Henry on your show as well. But like, how would the world's best courage coach, would he wear no shirt underneath his, you know,
I wore no shirt on Dan Henry's podcast and I got roasted tremendously.
What, like you had no shirt on at all?
No shirt. I had sunglasses, no shirt. Like I was like Andrew Tate, top G.
What did he say? What did he say to you?
Oh, he was like, I thought for a second I thought it was going good because he's like, hold up, I'm getting my camera set up. I'm just doing a few things. So he's just like talking normal. I was like, cool, man, this is gonna actually go better than I thought it would. And then like he gets on, he's like, all right, about to hit record. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom. He's like, what the fuck are you wearing? He's like, what? Like, what is that? So when it comes out, it's gonna be probably a crazy podcast if he ever drops it.
He'll look. He because I got interviewed and I was saying that I wouldn't work with vegans or vaccinated people, and just to be a bit more controversial and kind of like you were. But he will step out of character for that stuff. I think he was trying something, Marcos. So it's not really his character to be so brutal, but I would take it with a pinch of salt.
Yeah. Well, I did put a shirt on now. I was like, that would be a cool podcast style, like no shirt, sunglasses. But I was like, will people take me seriously? I don't know.
Look, maybe, but probably not until you're at a level of
his
popularity where you can, you know, like look at Bert Kreischer, the comedian, like the machine. He's the comedian that would do most of his sets topless, and he had a big belly and stuff. And he became known for that. So I think there's some value to it from time to time.
Yeah, I used it as a character. I was like, that would be a different character on his shows. Like his goal is to get lots of massive amounts of views. My goal is to learn about business. So I was like, let's be a win-win for each other. And that's what I was thinking in my head. Gotcha. But yeah, so I still want to go tap into the belief systems more because you're familiar with Sam Ovens?
The New Zealand school owner.
Yeah, New Zealand school owner. He says that you're the average of your beliefs, and which is why I started writing all my beliefs down. One of them was like, I had the belief that I could only work I'm working a job and I only have 2 days a week to grow my business. And I looked at that as a negative thing. I was like, man, I can't grow my business because I only have 2 days. And so I find that really interesting. The swear jar that you mentioned, I'm going to make one of those because we don't, if you're not around me, I don't have anyone around me to say like, yo, what, like, do you hear yourself? So I think that's a cool idea, but no, do you believe you believe you're the average of your beliefs? What do you find most common with people you work with that's besides beliefs that stop them from improving, or is it just their beliefs?
Look, I mean, beliefs, you're starting to get technical on me, Marcos, but what I would say is that like the work that I do when I'm in a coaching situation with someone, is it's not for me to pull the want and the desire to step out of their comfort zone.
Mm.
It's for them to see possibility for themselves. And I think I do that best by powerful anecdotes of real life situations that have happened. And I know we really haven't touched on hardly any of the stuff, but like one of the things I've become very well known for is cold calling celebrities or A-list people and inviting them onto my podcast. And like, you know, I referenced the Les Brown thing. Like that all happened for free. Like I never paid Les. I've never paid a guest.
That's impressive too.
Well, you know, I was talking to him on like this time a week ago because a friend of mine died, and his name is Rob Hanley, and he was in his early 50s. He had a brain, he had a stroke and a brain aneurysm, I think, and then cancer very quickly within 5 months. But he was the editor-in-chief of the Recovery Today magazine. He featured me in that last year, which is the largest recovery magazine in the world. And it was the same magazine that had Robert Kennedy Jr. on the front cover. I didn't know about Bobby Kennedy being in recovery. But I said to Rob, as a thank you for like putting me in the magazine for free, I said, how can I help you, dude? And he said, oh, mate, I love Les Brown. I'd love to interview him. And so I set that up. Excuse me. I set that up, and Rob interviewed Les. And that was the last interview Rob ever did before he died. And I only found this out a couple of days ago. And so I rang Les and I told him that after Rob interviewed him, he rang me up and he said, Laban, this is a highlight of my entire career. This is the greatest. Excuse me. Sorry. This is the highlight of my entire career. And he had people like Russell Brand on the front cover and all these incredible, amazing, you know, well-known people. And I just wept and wept and wept and wept. And I was wondering what the reason that Rob and I were brought together. Was it for him to bring me into his world, and or was it for me, and vice versa, you know? And like these things, to many people, I think, Marcos, are pipe dreams, or sometimes they can't even really see themselves doing any of this stuff. And I'm not saying that I'm better than anyone else. I'm not, but I never finished school. I never went to university. I have no formal qualifications at all. And like, in addition to Les writing the foreword, I got Dr. John Gray, who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Like when my wife and I interviewed him, he volunteered to write a beautiful endorsement in my book. I got an endorsement from the former All Blacks coach, the rugby team in New Zealand, Sir Steve Hansen, who's been knighted by the Queen. You know, like he wrote a really humbling thing of, you know, Mark Schulman, who was the drummer for Pink and Journey and Foreigner. Like who am I? And the reason that I've been able to bring these things into my existence is because of a belief system that now exists that I can add tremendous value into people's lives. So I operate from a place of what value can I bring this person's life? Not just a famous person, but like a cleaner in a bathroom in Colombia that I was talking to through Google Translate a few months ago. And I was just telling her that she was greatly appreciated, and like through a translator device, and she wept in the bathroom, in the men's bathroom, and hugged me. Like, and she earned $250 a month, by the way. And I think I gave her about $50. So like, but again, I'm not saying this to big note myself, but like, that's the kind of impact anyone can have. Anyone can benefit from this. What value can I add this person's life? And so that's the energy that I show up with every interaction. And I think that's what sets me apart from a lot of other people. You know, like even the way that you approach me on Instagram, like it was just something about it. I was like, you know what, let's go, let's do it. I get asked a lot, and I get requests for people to be interviewed on my show all the time. But it's just like, it's an energy thing. It's like showing up. I don't know what's going to happen with this, Marcos, but if I can be an integral part, or even a small part of helping you along your journey, and you having the confidence and the belief to understand that you have tremendous value, that when you get on with Dan Henry, that there's something that you've experienced and gone through, you can add tremendous value to his life. And the example I'll give you is that when Dan roasted me afterwards, actually, because I interviewed him on my podcast first, and then I got roasted maybe months later. So when I interviewed him, I was thinking, how can I add value to Dan Henry? And here's the example I'll give you. This is really ballsy stuff, I think. I could see that Dan had psoriasis on his hands. And I asked him, I said, hey, Dan, do you mind me asking, is that what I think it is? And he said, yes. And now the only reason I brought it up is because I've got a lot of experience talking to people and witnessing stuff firsthand about how to heal a lot of autoimmune stuff, which falls into that category, through diet shift and quitting alcohol. And then I just shared with them how I used a carnivore diet. And I know a lot of people that have helped heal psoriasis through adopting an animal-based diet. And I've had a couple of links that I could send them as well. Well, off the back of that, within about, I think, 2 weeks, I saw a video that Dan posted where he was pouring thousands of dollars worth of booze down the drain. Now, I'm not saying I made Dan Henry give up drinking, but what if I was able to share enough information for the dam to kind of burst, and he's like putting one and one together, and a culmination of other information and knowledge that people have given him because they serve. And then he's like, you know what? I don't need alcohol anymore. And I'm pretty sure he's still sober. And now he's jacked. He looks great. And now he's getting into bodybuilding and doing this other stuff. So this is the significance, I suppose, of how you can dramatically improve people's lives. And this is what I seek to do with every interaction where I'm going to be talking to someone for more than a split second. Even the checkout chick at a supermarket, the way that you respond to how are you can dramatically shift the outcome. And it's like, hi, how are you? And I say, honestly, and they'll look up and they'll go, yeah. I'll go, I am blessed. And they'll go, how are you blessed? And I go, look at me. I got food in my belly, clothes on my back. And then if my wife's there, I got the love of a beautiful woman. Like, what else does a man want? And they go, oh yeah, you're right. My husband's really great. Or what? Like, and then all of a sudden their energy shifts for the next person that's going to scan all their groceries through. And it's just like this. I love having fun with this. I love giving people the ability to see possibility for themselves. So I don't even know if that answered the question, but that's where we went.
No, that's incredible. No, you've answered a lot of questions, and you went deep. The thing is, you going deep. I like that. We're going deep today.
Deep,
very, very deep. So, I want to run. So for people out there who can benefit from your help, who exactly are you looking to help?
So I have a mastermind called Podcasting Heroes, Marcos, and that's been running for more than a year now. It's a virtual high-ticket mastermind for entrepreneurs, typically entrepreneurs that have a podcast as part of their overall strategy. And it's not about the technical stuff, like how to set up the microphone and the headset and whatever else. This is really a mindset shift, because I introduce people to a world where they learn how to reach out and connect with A-list guests, and in whatever niche, right? In whatever niche. And because I can give someone Les Brown's cell phone number, but most people don't know what to do with it. And I'll give you an example. Can I critique you a little bit, Marcos?
Yes, go ahead. I'm ready. I'm all here for it. I like the raw stuff.
Did you actually speak to Chuck Liddell, or was that someone pretending?
No, I really did. I really spoke to Chuck Liddell. Hold on, let's see if I don't know if he'll answer my call, but let's see.
Well, look, don't ring him now. Don't ring him now. And I'll explain why. I'll explain that. So, what was the context for ringing him, by the way? Do you know him?
I met him out because I work at a bar, so I work at Wonder Bar. And he was actually at my bar getting drunk one night, and I was out there getting drunk one night, and I was like, man, that's Chuck Liddell. And so before then, I was a YouTuber. Before like so I went from agency owner to getting rid of my business, drinking, going into that lifestyle, to being a YouTuber, doing pranking and stuff like that. And so people like told Chuck Liddell, he's like, hey, this is that guy that ran across the football field, because I ran across the Texas Longhorn football field for one of my videos. And he's like, oh, cool. It's like I think he was gonna invite me to hang out with him, but he had all his like people with him. He had like multiple people with him. He had his wife with him, and I wasn't trying to go hang out with him and his wife or girlfriend at the time. But for some reason, I was like, Chuck Liddell, let me have your number. Like, let me have your number, because I was figured if I can get Chuck Liddell's number, like, I don't know, it could become beneficial at some point. He might even jump on this podcast one day. So he gave me his number. I don't know if he was just drunk or whatever, but like during that time. But he gave me his number, and then I was like, okay. I was streaming one day. I was like, let me call Chuck Liddell, and he answered the call. He's like,
so first things first, I love the fact that you got the balls to do that, right? Because this is really important with what I'm going to share. The second thing is the observation. I only watched the first like 20 seconds of it. That was all I needed to see, right? You reacted, and I'm going to give you a solution to this, so it's not abuse, right? Feedback without a solution is considered abuse, by the way. It was probably the same way 1,000 other people have picked up the phone to Chuck Liddell before. And if I rang him now and I said to him, hey, do you remember being FaceTimed by someone called Marcos? He may remember, but more than likely it'll just blur into insignificance, right? I don't know what happened with the rest of the call, but like, here's the thing. How do I learn how to show up in a way that's going to elicit Chuck Liddell wanting to have a conversation with me and wanting to be in my presence rather than me being in his presence? Like, people at that level have been given so much attention and so many opportunities that it has to be very, very unique and very beneficial for them to want to even spend time with you. So I'm not giving you grief, because you wouldn't have known any of this stuff, right? This is all just part of this learning journey. So if you adopt the what value can I add this person's life, then the next time you FaceTime him or ring him, hey, Chuck, it's Marcos from, whereabouts do you live? What part of the world? Florida?
Austin, Texas.
Oh, you're in Austin. Okay. Austin, Marcos from Austin, Texas here. Hey, hey, Marcos, what's up? Chuck, I'm the host of an incredible podcast series and a huge fan of you and your work, and I'd be honored if you came on and shared your amazing story with our audience. When are you available? And now he's like, and if you say that with enough self-assuredness and enough confidence, this is this exact same language that I've used to land incredible people, Nobel Prize winners, Olympic gold medalists, like the top doctors, the top singers, like the people that Wintley Phipps, the guy that inspired Oprah Winfrey to become Oprah Winfrey with whatever, is happening in Oprah's life now, but it's not the point. Like, I have had unprecedented access, and a number of these relationships have turned into friendships and business opportunities. And I'm not doing it for that specifically, but it's a byproduct of how I show up. And so what's the benefit to your audience about interviewing probably one of the most famous UFC fighters in history? One of the OGs. He will have sage advice and wisdom that we can all benefit from if you only give the platform. And a podcast is a brilliant way to do it without having to spend a lot of money. And as I said to you, I haven't paid a single guest to be on the show, nor have I paid to be a guest. And not that I have any issues with pay to play, but for me, it wasn't necessary because of how I did it. I've been on Brad Lee's show twice last year. They haven't spent any money at all doing that. That was just all off the back of being super vigilant about how I could add value to Brad Lee's life. And that took 14 hours of research before I interviewed him to even get to a point of confidence where I was able to find something in my research that I was able to add a tremendous amount of value in. And then that net result was him organically inviting me on the show. And this is the power of it. This is the power of when you shift that, what am I going to get out of this, to what value can I add this person's life?
I love it. No, I really do love that. That does change the game. That changes, because now it's not what can I get from this? It's what can you give? What can I give you from this conversation? And then they want to come back and talk to you because it's like, yo, this guy is actually benefiting me versus just like everybody else who's taking who just wants from me.
Well, this can come into play in all areas of your life. And a quick example I'll give you is that the cell phone company over here, the main one, it's kind of like a Verizon, is called Telstra. It's like the national telecommunications partner. And my wife's phone was inactive. It was a brand new account for a month. And they were going to offer $60 as compensation. And I just said to the guy, look, we have spent 15 hours on hold, worked out roughly what it was. And I said, create a scenario where we walk away from this experience. And when people ask us about Telstra, so this is the guy I'm on the phone to yesterday, create a situation where when people ask me about my experience with Telstra, you've reimbursed us to a level where we are now saying, you know what, they made a mistake, but they really came through. And I ended up getting 3 times that amount just because of the language I was out. And I didn't threaten him or abuse him or whatever. He was a good dude. His name was JC. He was Jesus Christ. Now I think about it. He could see, because of the way that I was able to articulate a future that would benefit Telstra. And because if you walk away and you've spent a month without a phone connection, the next time someone says, hey, what do you think of Telstra? You're like, do not use them as long as you live. And companies don't get this stuff. They don't get it. So anyway, I'll shut up now.
No, it's been an interesting podcast. How much time do you have? Just to be curious.
Dude,
we're pushing an hour. I feel like we've gone very, very, very in depth.
Nah, I'm good, dude. I'm good.
You're good? All right.
Whatever you need.
I'm wondering if we should just cut it here. This is good. This is good.
You're the boss, Marcos.
Yeah.
You're the boss.
Where can people find you at?
There's 2 ways you can do that.
Okay.
First way is you can put Laban. And then the second thing is you can put Ditchburn in a search engine, your favorite one, and then hit enter and just see what comes up. Because there's only one Laban Ditchburn on planet Earth. Or if you just go to labanditchburn.com, all my links are all there.
Perfect. So yeah, no, this is great. I think this is gonna be an incredible podcast. Appreciate you I appreciate you coming on the show because you've been incredible. And I hope to have you on again next year. In a year, I want to bring you back on.
Well, the answer will always be no if you never ask the question, Marcos.
I'll ask you. I'm going to muster up the courage in a year to ask you.
Well, here's the thing. How many episodes have you recorded so far?
I think I'm on episode 15.
15. Okay.
So I beat the curse. The curse is 5. Every podcast dies at 5.
Yeah, it's actually 20 something
20?
is when most people drop
5.
off. 20, 25. Yeah. But
I'm not there yet then.
The thing that I would encourage you to think about is, so I've done 220 odd, I think, just with one podcast, and I was a guest or a co-host of another one that I did maybe 10 episodes. It is compressed time for me. It's 10 years worth of networking that I've achieved in 2. It's generated more than $1 million US in free stuff from guests and the associated introductions that they've made. In fact, for anyone that's like thinking about starting a podcast or has one and they want to shortcut the experience, get a free video training that I created at podcastingheroes.com. Podcastingheroes.com. podcastingheroes.com.
I think you should connect with my last guest. Actually, my last guest, he's actually starting a podcast. He legit is starting one today. He came on my podcast because I think, 1, he was recommended, but 2, he wants to start a podcast. So he was kind of seeing what it was like.
Well, dude, you can feel free to connect. I'm always interested in meeting great, high quality humans.
You're still running your podcast right now?
Yeah.
Perfect.
We recorded.
We'll have him. Maybe he can jump on your podcast. I think y'all be good, and I think you'd be good for his. I think you would be actually really good for his podcast too, because he's looking for people to also be on his show.
Well, so Marcos, let me give you some instant feedback. All right, this goes into the over servicing component. What you want to do is you want to create a scenario or an environment where you are inviting people rather than he should be. I don't even know who you are talking about. Him and I might be completely out of alignment. He might look at one of my previous interviews and think that I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist. So that makes him a fucking terrible guest for the podcast. You know what I mean? So the best language you can use, and for those that are listening, is like, would it be okay, Laban, if I connected you with someone that I think could be a really good person for you to know? Of course. Who's going to say no to that? And then if anything happens, good, bad, or ugly, then it's up to me. I made the decision rather than fucking Marcos just connecting these guys who he just had a great podcast with, but didn't realize the guy was a Klan member and,
Or what was the one you told Dan Henry you were going to do business with the vegans? Well, he could be a vegan.
Well, then he's going to I've kind of relaxed.
I'll mess with you.
Not relax that. Well, no, I firmly believe like what I said to Dan as well. And the reason being was based on the last 4 years, like 99% of all the challenging human interactions I've had have been with plant-based, usually ideological vegans. It's crazy. There's a whole scientific reason why that's happening, but don't go vegan, folks.
I don't plan on it. I like meat.
Good.